Yesterday, I traveled out onto the frozen surface of Lake Simcoe. Somehow these long, busy days working in my office at home, while we all do our best to cope with what we hope will be the last tidal wave of this pandemic, somehow this created a longing in me that was strong enough to push me out on the ice despite the minus 23 degrees which threatened to rob me of my breath. Longing to escape the confines of my cozy isolation, out onto the ice I trudged as the cold air sharpened my vision. It didn't take very long before the many layers of clothing with which I had hoped to insulate myself from the dangers of the cold failed to keep me moving very far into the expanse of white snowdrifts which glistened as the sun's glorious rays danced, incapable of warming much of anything but my heart. Standing beneath a clear blue sky, looking out towards the horizon, I tried to breathe in some of the vastness which stretched before me. Alas, such a deep breath choked me on frigid air, as if my lungs rejected their own impulse to breathe, lest they themselves freeze as solidly as the lake beneath my feet. A momentary panic began to surface as my mind questioned the wisdom of standing on ice, not knowing what lay below. How deep, how solid, how safe. A quick glance towards the shoreline confirmed that I was well beyond where I would safely swim on a summer day, and a strange sort of vertigo began to take hold over me. It was as if my body was teaming up with my mind to convince my spirit to abandon this peculiar excursion. Such a strange dualism to entertain on the surface of a frozen lake beneath a clear blue sky, staring out at a horizon I have all too often entertained. Ice and water below me, the sun shining before me, and behind me the moon rising, all holding me in the embrace of a cosmos the likes of which exceeds the farthest horizon of my ability to comprehend. Imagining the horizons of my ancient ancestors, I could see in my mind's eye a familiar worldview, a three-tiered universe, complete with an omnipotent God smiling and then frowning down at me. Heaven above the earth and hell below, all depending upon a smile or a frown from the omniscient God himself, confined to sit in judgment in a celestial realm from which he sent his Son to save creatures of his own creation from their own depravity. I stomped my feet upon the ice in a vain gesture of defiance until my stomping evolved into a dance of freedom as I gleefully celebrated our liberation from the captivity of a three-tiered universe. Suddenly, the cosmos reminded me that freedom from ancient ways of knowing does not mean freedom from reality. Indeed, it can mean freedom to be in ways which affirm reality, the reality we long to know, the one which is beyond the beyond and beyond that also, this love which we call God. No sooner than I felt the freedom of union with the divine than it was time to seek the confines of my car to warm up. All week long, I have been immersed in the anonymous gospel storyteller we know as Luke's ancient account of Jesus' first sermon, in which Jesus declares that he has been anointed to bring good news. And it wasn't until my own frozen epiphany set me to dancing on ice that I actually noticed that part of the good news of which Jesus speaks involves the proclamation of liberty to those held captive. Listen to the way the anonymous gospel storyteller recounts Jesus' words. Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee. and his reputation spread throughout the region. He was teaching in the Galilean synagogues, and all were loud in their praise. Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. Entering the synagogue on the Sabbath, as was his habit, Jesus stood up to do the reading. When the book of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him, he unrolled the scroll and found the passage where it is written, "The Spirit of our God is upon me because the Most High has anointed me to bring good news to those who are poor. God has sent me to proclaim liberty to those held captive, recovery of sight to those who are blind, and release to those who are in prison, to proclaim the year of God's favor." Rolling up the scroll, Jesus gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all the synagogue were fixed on Jesus. Then he said to them, "Today, in your hearing, this scripture is fulfilled." We are told by the gospel storyteller that after his one-line commentary on the words of Isaiah, Jesus' hometown congregation were so incensed that they decided to hurl him off a cliff. What could possibly compel Jesus' friends and neighbors to consider homicide? This question has generated more than a few sermons of its own. That's the thing with stories. One story, if it is remotely engaging, that one story will inevitably lead to many more stories. So I will not presume to answer for Jesus' hometown congregation's murderous intentions. I will only attempt to take you where this story took me, out there on the ice of Lake Simcoe. Exposed to the vastness of the cosmos, it was the ancient story of a three-tiered universe that inspired not murderous intentions in me, but rather the euphoria of freedom from captivity to the limitations of our ancestors' imaginations. Limitations which the evolving nature of our understanding of reality compel us to reject. For God is not safely ensconced in the heavens, and we do not need saving from our own depravity by a human sacrifice, because there simply is no hell below us. We are free from the captivity of a way of thinking which insists that we believe what our own experience confirms is no way to live in the very reality our ancestors were struggling to fathom. For we have been blessed with the ability to grasp so many more details about the cosmos in which we live and move and have our being than our ancestors could ever have imagined. Today, we ourselves and our neighbors no longer live captive to the contours of the very tiny universe in which our ancestors confined their thoughts. Today, like Jesus, we too can proclaim liberty to the captive minds and recovery of sight to those who have been blinded by ancient ways of knowing. The Spirit of divinity is within us. The Spirit of divinity is within all creation, permeating all of the cosmos. The Spirit of divinity is beyond creation, beyond the cosmos, even as it is in and with and through all of creation, all of the cosmos. Infused, inspired, and incarnating as Christ's body, as love here and now in this place and in this time, we are anointed to bring this good news to the poor and to free the captives. Free from images and idols created by the inhabitants of a universe of misconceptions, we can abandon lives devoted to a God preoccupied with judging our journey's end, dispatching us to heaven or hell. We are free to live in the abundance of life here and now in a cosmos permeated by the divine mystery which is love. free from misguided struggles to appease the idol God of our design. We are free to see beyond our blind, self-centered desire for a life beyond this life, free to see the face of divinity in our neighbor's face, free to see divinity in the majesty of the cosmos, and to see divinity in the beauty of the earth. Heaven is ours to create out of the hells we have made. We are free to imagine the grace of the mystery, capable of exquisite intricacy, unrelented intimacy, magnanimous generosity, and evolutionary complexity. A mystery which is the very embodiment of love, the love which is eternally becoming. We are free to seek, to know, and to become this love in which we live and move and have our being. Our very freedom from ancient ways of knowing and being sets off a chain reaction of freedom which can, if we let it, become good news for the poor as we finally begin to understand what Jesus knew all along, when Jesus insisted, "I and the Abba are one." For if Jesus and the Abba are one, then the good news is that you and I and our neighbors, we are one with Abba. I can hear them now, those held captive by our ancestors' limited understanding. I can hear them. They may not want to hurl me off a cliff, although some of them have wished me dead, or at the very least judged and punished by their God of eternal torment. I can hear them tut-tutting at the audacity of my taking such liberties with the gospel. How dare I flirt with new ways of understanding reality, new discoveries about the cosmos, new theories about the nature of human consciousness? How dare I posit a God who is love? How dare I claim freedom from the old man in the sky God, only to embrace half-baked notions of a mystery which is called love, as if love is the answer? How double-dog dare I? Well, with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek, let me blame it on a dog. After warming myself on my car's heating vent, I caught sight of a sundog begin to emerge as the sun was still setting. I fumbled for my phone and hopped out of the car into the frigid air, desperate to capture a photograph, which has always eluded me. I failed to capture the sunset. Instead, I was blessed by two. I don't know if they were my brothers or my sisters or one of each. I only know that they appeared to follow in my footsteps in the snow as they ventured out to the place where the cosmos had made itself known to me. Our kinship warmed me as I imagined their delight at our sun's sensuous, self-giving display as it set. They must have seen me gazing at them, or at least I like to imagine that they did. So I waved and was gifted by their own energetic response. There we stood, three kindred creatures, waving together as one, held in a vast cosmos, touched by the mystery, which is the love which permeates all that is, including us, for we are one with divinity. We are free to embrace this love, to walk in this love, and to be this love. This, dear ones, is good news indeed. Now, today, let us become good news for the poor. Let us embrace our freedom to be love in the world. Let us be love today.